Welcome back to this already, the final segment of The Price of Business. And I got a really incredibly special guest here on today's program, Congressman Tom DeLay, a friend of mine now for a couple of decades. You're about to enter that sphere, and I'm where I don't want to say how long I know you because it only dates me. But Congressman Tom DeLay, so delighted that you could join us today.
I think we met when you were a high school student.
I just look like one. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. But you are an extraordinary gentleman, extremely courageous, passionate about freedom. Yeah. And your story to me is a story of government gone awry, the excess of power, the excess of abuse. And people want to read all these narratives. They want to read what the media has to say, which has such an incredible agenda. And it's so obvious and so clear, but people are, in my opinion, are too sleepy or lazy or lethargic to really dig a little deeper as to what in the world is going on. And so what I like to do is start, if you don't mind, kind of setting the stage of your story, if you will.
Setting the stage by story.
Of your story, yeah. Well, and we only have minutes, not hours. Yeah. So keeping that in mind.
Well, basically, I came out of the private sector. I owned a pest control business back in the 70s. And every time I turned around, the government was interfering with my ability to raise my family and build my business. So I decided to get involved in it. Little did I know that I would end up majority leader of the United States House of Representatives, and that's the story.
Yeah.
I went to Congress in '85, worked very hard to take over the majority in Congress for the first time in 60 years. In 1995, we took the majority, and we pretty much have held that majority, except for 2 years ever since.
Yeah, absolutely. And the significance of that is it was decades. I think it was back in the 30s since the last time the House was Republican dominated before 1994.
That's exactly right. With 1 2-year period during the Eisenhower administration.
But
basically,
exactly right.
60 years of Democrat dominance of Congress.
That's right. And so you were part of that, what they called the Republican Revolution of 94. There's a Republican Revolution of 80. You're a part of the 94 one. Yeah. And when did you get elected to the legislature before you ran for the U.S.
1978, I ran for the state legislature.
So you were even part of the 80 revolution as well.
Yeah,
so,
I was a Reagan baby.
There you go. That's right. Me too. My first vote, Ronald Reagan, my best vote.
Yeah, I think it probably made Bush the maddest at me because I supported Reagan over Bush.
There you go.
And Bush being from Houston, Texas.
And that is hard to do from Texas. Forget about Houston. And so, but again, you've always been very courageous about where you stood. And I think that's what made you such a nuisance to the hard left and led to the what I think, and by the way, Jim Ellis and I go back decades too, and I know Jim Ellis is a friend of yours, but I think that's what led to the preposterous, and I say now, especially when you look at how it's been adjudicated, trumped up charges that came against you.
Well, that's what happens to the left. They've criminalized politics. If they can't beat you in the political arena, they'll try to destroy you. And that's a strategy of theirs. It's in their books. It's in Alinsky's book. It's if you are against their ideology, and if you win, and that was my biggest problem, is we won.
We kept winning over and over again. You're so irritating to the left, my God. And so, I'm excited that. Why don't you say briefly the charges and the fact that and they had to go. They literally went shopping for a court to prosecute.
Well, it's worse than that. Actually, it started 17 years ago in 1995. They announced publicly that they were going to take Tom DeLay down.
Okay.
Nancy Pelosi announced that they were going to take me out, and that was when I first got my first ethics charges. More ethics charges in 2000, all frivolous and dismissed. I even had a racketeering suit filed against me by the Democrat Campaign Committee in 2000. More ethics charges in 2002. And then they found the rogue district attorney, Ronnie Earl, in Austin, Texas, to indict me on a law that doesn't exist in Texas.
Yeah.
And he shopped multiple grand juries. One grand jury even no-billed me until he found a grand jury that was just sworn in 30 minutes to indict me on the day of the statute of limitations.
Unbelievable.
And then it took 5 years. They stretched it out 5 years to go to trial. It was a kangaroo court, awful
making
judge.
sure that cloud was always over you, making it impossible really for you to just just living.
Well, basically, the Republicans had a rule in the House that if a leader was indicted, he had to step aside his leadership, and that's really all they wanted. But they accepted the icing on the cake to keep me out of politics. So 5 years going to trial, was convicted by a jury of left-wing wackos out of Austin, Texas. But then 3 years later, in my appeals, I was exonerated and acquitted.
Yeah, fantastic story.
But 17 years.
17 years.
$12 million in legal fees.
I would call it persecution.
Oh,
I
definitely
personally would call it 17
political
years of
persecution.
Two decades. You don't think it happens in America? It happens. It happens all the time. This is why there's not as many courageous leaders on the right, to be honest with you. The left can do whatever they want, because there's going to be no consequences to it.
That's right.
But someone takes stands like you and are so incredibly effective like you, watch out. And so guys like you, I mean,
well, that's part of the
I get choked up, frankly, talking about your story. I talk to your story about others, and I hear, conservatives, Republicans who are good intended, but they won't read beyond the headlines, or they'll read a couple of paragraphs, and they paint with this broad brush, and I'm going, Tom DeLay is a hero. I mean, no, you are a hero. I mean, you've been fighting for liberty in a way most aren't willing to do, and have taken it on a chin in a way that most aren't willing to do, and you've paid, in so many respects, an incredible price.
Well, we haven't been stopped.
No, I know. That's
nor
why.
have we not. We're not intimidated. We're going forward in a much bigger way. I'm a better person for it. I give glory to God for getting me through it and giving me the strength to get through it. And he and I are connected at the hip, and we're going forward in many big ways to the future, to try to provide that leadership that is so desperately needed in the conservative movement.
So what does that look like? How does that leadership going forward from Tom DeLay look like?
Well, first of all, we need to look at the conservative movement, and I have, and look at the voids in that movement, and I have, and hopefully can fill the voids. The left, over the last 15 years, with Obama's help, has put together the most powerful political coalition that I've ever witnessed in my life.
It's incredible. It's a machine.
And we have done nothing to counter that, or to at least come to parity with that. And we need to rebuild the conservative movement's infrastructure so that we have the capacity to fight at least on a level playing field with. And then the second thing is we have to go on offense. We're constantly on defense. We're constantly reactionary. It's time for a revolution for the Constitution.
Yeah.
And we need constitutional revival in this country. And this huge chasm between the left and the right has to be fought out with the American people, and I hope to be part of that.
Okay, so does it include, I assume, grassroots efforts?
Definitely.
Yeah, grassroots efforts. But what other areas do you see tactically you being involved as well as strategically?
Well, it may not go with your program, but first and foremost, we have to return to being a moral country.
Absolutely.
We have lost our morality in this
Free market
country.
Economics is built on morality.
Exactly right. You can't have free market economics unless you have a moral people.
Yeah.
You cannot have our Constitution way of life unless we have a moral people. And we have pushed God out of our morality and out of our public sphere. And we need to put God back into that so that we have a moral people. We also need to educate our people and so that they have the knowledge of who we are, what is the Constitution, and the philosophy and ideology of the Constitution is basically all men are created equal.
Yeah.
And therefore, you have the opportunity to be whatever you can be as long as you work hard to be it without the interference of government. That's contrary to the left, who wants to create this utopia and that you get your rights from the government. And the government, your rights, the government gives you those rights and gives you opportunity comes from the government. Those are two divergent views that needs to be fought out in the political sphere.
Yeah, on many different levels.
On many different levels.
Tom DeLay is a former congressman, former majority leader, one of the most influential Americans of our time, and a great fighter for liberty, and has been and continues to be. I'm so delighted to have him on my program. Literally goosebumps at moments just to see you, man. I'm very proud of you and very happy for you, and very glad that you were willing to spend some time with me.
Well, thank you. I hope to come back.
Oh, plan on that.
The fight is big, and we need all the help we can get.
Plan on that. Can I get a website from you?
I don't have one right
No,
now.
no website yet. But if you look up Tom DeLay there on Facebook, you're all over Facebook.
Yeah,
and
I have a fan page.
You have a fan page there. If you go to usdailyreview.com, we'll have information about this interview. Also, priceofbusiness.com with links over to that Facebook page.
Yeah.
Congressman, thanks so much.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right. Great program today. Loved being with you. Look forward to being with you here tomorrow on the next Price of Business.